What is going on, y'all? My name is John, and this is Facemask Fantasy, bringing you new fantasy content every day right here on this channel. So if you have not subscribed already, please hit that button. And before I get into it, I just got to let y'all know that we are rolling out live streams. We have a live stream every Sunday at 10 a.m. to go over start-sit questions pre-kickoff, and we have a stream every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. to go over everything that happened in last week's games and to go over waiver options before the waiver deadline early Wednesday morning. So tune in with us every Sunday and every Tuesday throughout the season, and hopefully we can help you win your fantasy leagues. But without further ado, let's get into some fantasy talk. And I don't know about you, but I woke up to an alert on my phone in the middle of the night that Odell Beckham had been released by the Browns. This after being excused from the past 2 practices despite showing up to the facility, and all this after his dad made grievances about his son's usage on Twitter publicly and basically blaming everybody in Cleveland, including mainly Baker Mayfield, for Odell's struggles. So rough situation, weird situation. I can really only compare it to something like Antonio Brown from a few years ago. The difference being Brown was always effective when on the field, despite off-field issues that followed him around for a good 3 to 4 years there before reinventing himself in Tampa. Odell hasn't been productive in 2 to 3 years, and he hasn't been a wide receiver 1 in like 4 to 5 years. Now, since the trade deadline has come and gone, Beckham must first clear waivers, even though he was a vested veteran. Beckham has agreed to a revised contract that reduces the team's obligation to pay Beckham if he's not claimed on waivers and becomes eligible for the balance of the salary termination pay. Beckham does not want to get claimed. He wants to clear waivers, so the situation isn't as easy as he can now choose wherever he wants to go from the rip. But I think he clears waivers unless the team is completely desperate. I'm not ruling it out because there are definitely some wide receiver needy teams out there, and we'll get to that later. But I'm of the belief that OBJ does not want to go somewhere and share the spotlight. He did that with Jarvis and was outshined by Jarvis in almost every way for the whole time he spent in Cleveland. I expect him to want to go somewhere akin to his first home in the Giants, a good quarterback, wide open depth chart, where he can be the unquestioned one, and a big enough city that's a big enough draw. Cleveland was always the worst landing spot for OBJ from a spotlight standpoint, and whether consciously or unconsciously, I believe he needs that to fuel his fire. And last but not least, winning too. He wants to win, and I don't blame him after a career of basically a bunch of losing. Now, there are a bunch of teams that I guess make sense, but I think the one team that fits the mold in all of those categories is the Raiders at 6-2. Now, before I make the case for Las Vegas, there is a smaller case to be made for playoff-bound teams where OBJ wouldn't be the one. We've seen it in Tampa where they just stack up weapons at every position regardless of incumbent talent. We've seen the Rams do it as well, even more on defense than on offense, but still stands. Speaking of which, the Rams could obviously make a final all-in push and sign OBJ. The Chiefs could get OBJ to play second or third fiddle to Hill and Kelsey. The Packers could sign him to play second fiddle to Devontae and soak up some of those Robert Tonyan targets. There's a case for all these teams, but I still believe OBJ wants to be a stat monster again. Being a borderline role player on a potential playoff team has led to him being released. He's not happy with that role. If given a choice, he will not seek out that role. And New Orleans was a hot speculative landing spot after Michael Thomas announced that he was out for the season, but with some combination of Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian at quarterback in New Orleans, I just don't see that being a landing spot he seeks out. So now to the Raiders. Landing spot wise, they have a good QB. Derek Carr, through 7 games played in the NFL this season, is averaging 324.1 yards per game, second in the league right now. He has a completion percentage of 67.7, 11th in the league right now at quarterback, and his average air yards per completion is 6.7, which is tied for 4th right now. The Raiders have a need at wide receiver, obviously. Henry Ruggs is no longer with the organization, but take a look at their current depth chart. Brian Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, newly elevated Zay Jones, and somebody named Dylan Stoner that they signed literally yesterday. And only Edwards and Renfrow are signed past this season. He'd be the wide receiver 1 there without too much issue. Las Vegas, from a city perspective, is about as spotlightish and flashy a city that you can get. They're winning. They just experienced a crap ton of bad press from the Gruden situation to the Ruggs situation, so they should be trying to get their fan base to boost. They've tried to address the wide receiver position in the past from free agency. If you remember, a few years ago, they did try to go out and get Antonio Brown. It didn't eventually work out for them, but they did try to make that work, and I believe they wouldn't be averse to trying to do that sort of move again. They have $3.4 million in cap space this year and $51 million in cap space next year. They have the space to sign him to a long-term deal. They have a need at wide receiver. He'd step in and be the guy for Las Vegas for a good quarterback in Derek Carr, and he'd love the city he's playing in. I think the Raiders are the one team that checks all the boxes. Now, of course, he could say, I'm willing to concede on one of these things to go and play with Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he could concede being in the spotlight city to go to Green Bay and play with Aaron Rodgers, play second fiddle to Devontae Adams, and still be a stat monster and help them make a push to be a Super Bowl contender once again. Again, they just lost Tonyan. They've been trying to address their wide receiver position since the offseason, drafting Amari Rodgers and signing Randall Cobb. I'm not saying that's not a destination. The best destination, though, that checks every single box is the Raiders. From a fantasy perspective, I'm not in on OBJ. I'll let somebody else deal with the headache now and moving forward. Can he go somewhere and be a fantasy wide receiver 1 again? I really don't think so. A fantasy wide receiver 2 again? Maybe, but I'm not expecting it. I'm expecting wide receiver 3 status for the rest of his career, which is technically an upgrade on the wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 status he'd been giving us for the past, let's be real, season and a half in Cleveland. So technically, this is a win for OBJ owners, but I'm still not trying to get him on any of my teams. And if I have him, I'm trying to sell once we know the landing spot and the speculation on his fantasy prospects begin to mount. Before we see him on the field, that's when you sell, regardless of where he goes. But let me know what you guys think about this OBJ situation. Do you think, like me, the Raiders make the most sense in basically all aspects? If not, where do you think he goes? I'll be following the situation closely and will react to any news as fast as I can for you guys, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. My name is John with Facemask Fantasy, bringing you new fantasy content every day right here on this channel, so if you have not subscribed already, please hit that button. Thank you for listening and have a great day.